This 8-year-old gets bullied at school, and when he tried to tell his parents, they were worse than expected. In a quiet suburban town, Peter's lonely nights take a mysterious turn when a mysterious voice starts speaking to him from within the walls. What begins as an innocent cry for friendship soon unravels into a chilling family secret buried beneath years of deceit and horror. As we dive into this chilling story, stay till the end to discover who, or what, is locked up in the old house. A week before Halloween, Peter, a timid boy who lives in an old house with his parents, suddenly hears a soft knock on the wall one night. At first, he assumes he is imagining things. However, when he hears it again, he jumps out of bed and quickly turns on the light. He then looks outside before shutting his window, and then approaches the wall where he's sure he heard the knock from. There, he rests his head and knocks on the wall quietly and slowly. And, to his surprise, he hears a knock from the other side of the wall. He quickly rushes to his parents' room and wakes his mother up, telling her he heard something. She then goes to the room and knocks on the same wall, but doesn't get a response. With this, she sends him to bed and softly tells him he's imagining things. The next morning, Peter gets on the school bus, and his classmate, Brian, trips him on his way to school. As all others make fun of Peter, Brian says he'll get more during recess. Later that morning, in class, their principal introduces them to Miss Devine, their new substitute teacher. While Devine teaches them, Brian throws a piece of paper at Peter and reminds him about their meeting in recess. When it's time for recess, Devine sees Peter still in class and learns he doesn't like recess and doesn't have friends. Moments later, while chatting and decorating the class with him, a spider suddenly crawls on his desk, so she quickly covers it with a glass cup before handing him a piece of paper and instructing him to slide it under the cup. With their teamwork, they successfully get the spider out of the class. Later that night, during dinner, Peter asks his parents what he's going to dress as for Halloween, because he wants to dress up like the other kids, but his parents refuse. Minutes later, despite Carol's disapproval of the old house down the lane, Mark tells his son about the little girl who lived there before Peter was born and vanished on Halloween. After that, they assure Peter that they won't let such happen to him, which is why he won't celebrate Halloween. Moments later, when it's time for bed, Peter hears the same sound from the same wall and panics. When Mark shows up and finds his son saying the same thing about the voice again, he concludes they must be rats. So, the next day, they grab the rat poison in the workshop, and Peter learns it smells like cinnamon. Thereafter, Mark applies it around the house, and then advises Peter to man up and be brave. Later in school, Devine reads a Halloween story to her students while they draw, and she notices Peter drawing a disturbing image of a kid calling for help in his darkroom. After school, she heads to his home unannounced and meets Carol, who refuses to let her check on him. Before leaving, Devine shows Peter's drawing, noting how different it was from his classmates, and a shocked Carol quickly covers up for Peter, saying he has an overactive imagination. Afterward, she thanks Devine for showing up, slams the door in her face, and then goes straight to Peter's room to confront him about the drawing. Peter defends himself, saying he wasn't asking for help. Then he whispers that the girl in the wall is. Unfortunately, Carol hears him, so he brushes it off as one of his imaginations. By midnight, Peter hears the knock again, and this time around, a girl's voice tells him she just wants to talk. He tries shushing her, saying she is just a figment of his imagination, but she proves him wrong, and they talk that night. The next day in school, the students paint faces on their pumpkins, and Devine compliments Peter's. Brian gets jealous when he hears her and pushes Peter after school, before smashing his pumpkin. By nightfall, the girl tries to talk to Peter, and she hears him crying. When asked why, he opens up about Brian's constant bullying, and she encourages him to fight back. The following day in school, Brian shows up with his mom and brings a new pumpkin to class. He gives it to Peter and apologizes for what he did. Peter then recalls what his strange friend told him to do. So immediately school closes. He goes after Brian and pushes him down the stairs, ultimately breaking his right foot. After the incident, the school authority reaches out to Peter's parents, and they are shocked at his behavior. When they get home, Mark tells him he's been expelled and scolds him for acting violently. Carol then tells him about Peter's drawing, and Mark gets mad at him. Carol then tries sending Peter to his room, but Mark tells him he's grounded and will be in the basement. Carol reluctantly opens the door and checks the place out while Mark takes Peter there, before locking him inside. After they leave, Peter calls for the mysterious girl, but she doesn't respond, so he sobs. Meanwhile, in school, the principal warns Devine not to get personally invested in her students after he learned of her visit to Peter's place, and then tells her about a missing child in Peter's neighborhood. After he leaves, she searches the web and reads up on it. Elsewhere, Peter sees a chain in the basement and trails it to a cage where he sees a strange toy with human-like teeth lurking and smiling below. With Halloween drawing closer, Devine marks her pupil's math quiz, and she sees Peter's work, so she writes her phone number on it right after grading it. Her curiosity gets the better of her, and she drives to his home to deliver it. Carol sees her and tries to chase her off, but Mark shows up and tells her to come in. Inside, he hands her a glass of coffee, and she asks about Peter's welfare, wanting to know which school he'll enroll in. Instead, they tell her he'll be homeschooled, reminding her that Carol was once a teacher. Devine then asks if she can see Peter, saying she wants to say her goodbyes, but they decline. Carol, who can't stand Devine any longer, then flares up at her, and Peter overhears. As Mark calms her down, Peter hits the basement door, but the washing machine noise nearby drowns out his efforts. Very soon, Devine realizes she has overstayed her welcome, so she takes her leave but then stops after hearing a knocking sound. However, when she sees Mark with a hammer, she refuses to indulge any further and scurries out of the house in fear. While in her car, Mark startles her and hands her keys, which she forgot, before watching her drive off. That night, Carol bakes pumpkin for Peter and goes to the basement. Later, she scrubs his back in the bathroom, and Mark comes in, and Peter promises he'll grow up. His parents are overjoyed, and they tell him he'll be homeschooled henceforth. They tell him they love him before sending him to bed. Immediately they leave. He goes to the wall and knocks, asking the girl to talk to him. When she shows up, he tells her how he got kicked up, and she warns him about his parents, saying they aren't what they seem. Peter then tells her he wants to see her, and at first she refuses, saying he'll freak out, but then she tells him to check the hole behind the wallpaper. He bends down, peels up the wallpaper, and looks through the hole. At first, he doesn't see anything, but after he slides his ball into the hole, he sees an eye staring at him. He nearly freaks out and quickly backs off while asking her who she is, and she tells him she's Sarah, his sister. She's been waiting for him all this while to grow up till he is strong enough to move the house clock, which she says hides the door that shuts her in. He quickly rushes to sleep when she tells him their parents are evil and it'll soon be his turn behind the walls. Because of the revelation, he has a nightmare about his parents, and he wakes up in his mom's arms. She asks him about his dream, but he refuses to tell her. That night, Sarah tells him his parents will eventually kill him just like they tried to kill her, and tells him to dig the garden to find out what's buried there. On the 30th of October, Peter finds a skull while digging through the garden, and his mom spots him outside and calls out to him. Once he sees her coming downstairs, he covers the skull back with dirt and shows her a pumpkin, asking her if they can carve it for Halloween. Hours later, while Carol tries her best to carve pumpkins, Sarah reveals that what he saw earlier was the skull of the missing girl who vanished during Halloween, and their parents killed her and buried her when she came to their house and saw her. He gets scared and tells Sarah he'll get her out. He checks his math quiz and sneaks into his parents' room to call Devine. Devine picks up the call, and Peter whispers for her to help him. Unfortunately, his mom sees him and then speaks to Devine, lying about how Peter misses her. She slams the phone and yells at him while dragging him to his room, disappointed that he asked for help from a stranger. That's when she notices the hole behind his wall, and she shakes uncontrollably before yelling at Peter, asking him what Sarah had told him. Suddenly, the clock rings, and she tells him to prepare for the worst when she tells Mark about it. Later that evening, Sarah tells him about their parents' discussion, saying they are going to kill them, and he has to do something about it. He then goes downstairs and sees his parents discussing, so he runs to his room. Later on, Mark goes to talk to him and tells him to join him in the garden the next day. The following morning, Peter and Mark discover that a lot of their pumpkins have been infected with black rot, so Mark tells him to bury them in the hole. Some hours later, Brian shows Peter's house to his cousins, and they plan to show up later. That evening, the family gathers to have dinner while the kids pester their doorbell for treats. Carol storms to the door and chases them away before turning off the porch lights. Mark then commends her soup, saying it tastes different and smells sweeter. Carol tries it, notices it, smells it, and says it smells like cinnamon. Mark sees Peter hasn't touched his food and then realizes he has poisoned theirs. He grabs Peter and asks him what he did, and Peter mentions that he hurt Sarah. Mark immediately yells at Carol to call 911. Then he pukes his innards before collapsing to his death. Carol watches in horror as reality dawns on her, so she grabs a knife and charges at Peter for killing her husband. She chases him up the stairs, but then faces Mark's fate before Peter kicks her down. He snatches Carol's keys, but she uses her dying breath to warn him not to release Sarah. He disobeys and pushes off the wall clock before unlocking the door, and once he hears Sarah getting closer to it, he runs into his room and locks the door. Sarah immediately catches up to him and talks in a more mature voice, asking him through the door how it felt watching his parents die. Just then, they suddenly hear the doorbell ring, and right outside their door, Brian and his armed cousins wait for Peter to come out. To their surprise, the door opens widely for them, so they storm in. During that time, Peter hides under his bed, and Sarah hides Mark and Carol's bodies. The masked boys wreak havoc while looking for Peter, and one of them trips on Mark's blood. Another sees a moving long hair, and he is instantly attacked and killed. The others hear his scream, so they rush downstairs, as Sarah takes them down one by one. Before long, Devine rushes to Peter's house and almost runs over a kid. After Sarah, the demon spirit, kills the boys, she goes to Peter's room and scares him with a pumpkin. She then grabs him and drags him off to where she was locked. By that time, Devine shows up and tries calling 911 after seeing bodies around the house, but Sarah attacks her. Devine hears Peter's scream and arms herself, refusing to listen to his warning to leave. When she gets to his room, she hears his voice and quickly shuts the door to prevent Sarah from getting in. Peter tells her who Sarah is, and she breaks the wall for him to escape. They run out of the room and head straight for the door, but Sarah grabs Peter by the hair and drags him back inside. She takes him to the basement, and he sees her hideous form. Devine goes back inside the house again and heads straight for the basement. Sarah instantly attacks her, but Peter latches onto Sarah's long hair and climbs out of the cage. He holds Sarah back, while Devine pummels her with the crowbar, before kicking her into the cage and locking it. Sarah then switches to her childlike voice, asking Peter for help, saying they are alike, but Peter refuses. Pissed, she threatens to haunt him for the rest of his life, saying she'll always be with him, because after all, they are family.